Very good morning, dear students. Now I shall take up a new chapter under Money and Banking, the liquidity preference theory of interest, or the Keynesian liquidity preference theory of interest. There is a demand for and supply of money. Okay, Lord John Maynard Keynes, the greatest economist of the 20th century, in his popular book, The General Theory of Employment, Interest and Money, published in 1936, came out with a theory of interest called the liquidity preference theory of interest. Since he emphasized the role of liquidity preference in the determination of rate of interest, it is called liquidity preference theory of interest. According to Lord Keynes, rate of interest is purely a monetary phenomenon, and as such it is determined by demand for money and supply of money. So his theory is also called the monetary theory of interest. Okay, Lord Keynes' theory has two parts: the demand for money and the supply of money. So let us discuss about in detail the demand for money. Okay, Lord Keynes asked the question: why do people demand liquid cash when they can earn interest income by lending money? He says there are three motives for holding money. They are called transactions motive or transactions demand for money, precautionary motive or precautionary demand for money, and the speculative motive or speculative demand for money. So people hold cash balances with them, okay, for satisfying three motives: the transactions motive, the precautionary motive, and the speculative motive. Transaction motive for money will take up first. It's also called transactions demand for money. Transaction demand for money arises from the need for cash to meet foreseen and unforeseen, to meet day-to-day expenses of various kinds. While people receive their incomes by end of the month, their expenses go on every day. So they need a certain amount of cash to meet day-to-day expenses of various kinds. In those days, in 1936, when Lord Keynes published his famous book, The General Theory of Employment, Interest and Money, those days we didn't have any credit cards or debit cards, no ATM machines were available. So people had to keep ready cash or liquid cash with them all the time to meet day-to-day expenses of various kinds. Lord Keynes calls this the income motive of holding money. Okay, people who are having more cash, they will keep more income, they will keep more cash with them to meet day-to-day expenses of various kinds, because they get their salaries only by end of the month. Okay, and expenses go on every day. So a certain amount of ready cash is always required to meet day-to-day expenses of various kinds. Similarly, the business people also need cash to meet day-to-day expenses like purchasing raw materials, transport costs, okay, and other kinds of expenses and all that, which is called the income motive of holding money. Okay, so the business motive of holding money. So Lord Keynes puts this income motive and business motive together as, okay, the transactions motive or transactions demand for money. According to Lord Keynes, the transactions demand for money is a function of income. Okay, higher the level of income, higher will be the transaction demand for money. He uses the letter, okay, LT. LT stands for liquidity preference or transaction motive is a function of income. LT is F of Y, where F stands for functional relationship, LT stands for liquidity preference for transaction motive, and Y stands for income. So LT is F of Y. Okay, so the transactions demand for money is income elastic and interest inelastic. It has nothing to do with the rate of interest. If the rate of interest is very high, still people need to keep an amount of ready cash with them all the time to meet day-to-day expenses of various kinds. So LT is F of Y. That means liquidity preference for transaction motive is a function of income. LT stands for liquidity preference for transaction motive, F stands for functional relationship, Y stands for income. Okay, so LT is F of Y. Now the second motive, the precautionary motive or precautionary demand for money. According to Lord Keynes, people also keep certain amount of ready cash with them all the time to meet certain unexpected emergencies or unforeseen emergencies like sickness, accidents, unemployment, or breakdown of the car or business failure. To meet all these kinds of unforeseen emergencies, cash is the only source. Without cash, nothing can be done. So people will always keep certain amount of ready cash with them to meet unexpected emergencies. Okay. Again, it is also a function of income. But the amount of money held under this motive is just like water kept in a water tank as a reserve. For while you are taking bath, the water is flowing from the water tank to the bathtub. So the same way, certain amount of ready cash is all the time kept with people to meet unforeseen or unexpected emergencies. Okay, so the amount of money held under this motive depends upon the nature of the individuals. Okay, the amount of protection they want to give for their future, and the level of income they have. Okay, people who have more incomes and people who want to give more protection for their future, they will keep more cash with them. So the liquidity preference for precautionary motive is also a function of income. So LP is also F of Y. Liquidity preference for precautionary motive, LP stands for liquidity preference for precautionary motive or precautionary demand for money is a function of, F stands for functional relationship of income, Y stands for income. So LP is F of Y. Okay, Lord Keynes calls the transaction demand for money and precaution demand for money as demand for active cash balances. He says the demand for active cash balances, okay, is income elastic and interest inelastic. Okay, as income increases, people keep more cash to meet, okay, transaction demand for money and precaution demand for money. So he has given two diagrams to explain this. Look at this diagram. Here we show the incomes of the individuals. Here we show, okay, the demand for active cash balances. Okay, as the income increases, the demand for active cash balances, as income increases from OY to OY1, the demand for active cash balance increases from OM to OM1. Okay, it is also interest inelastic. Rate of interest may be rising. Here rate of interest is shown. Demand for active cash balance is given. Even the rate of interest is very high, still a certain amount of OM amount of money is held for meeting both, okay, precautionary demand for money and transaction demand for money. So they are income elastic and interest inelastic according to Lord Keynes. Okay, now comes a third motive, the speculative motive or speculative demand for money. This is a very unique, motive given by Lord Keynes. About Lord Keynes, the speculative demand for money arises from the need for cash to take advantages of the market movement of, okay, rate of interest and the changes in the price of securities like bonds. Okay, in the capital market, always people try to make, some speculative gain by investing in, okay, stocks and shares or, fixed interest yielding assets like bonds. Lord Keynes says that there is an inverse relationship between the rate of interest and the price of bonds. The speculative demand for money is an inverse function of the rate of interest, rising when the rate of interest falls and falling when the rate of interest rises. Okay, Lord Keynes, we can illustrate this point with an example. Suppose the market rate of interest in the economy is, say, 5%. Okay, at the same time, a company, say, Al-Futain, is floating some, fixed interest yielding assets like, a debenture. Okay, the company is floating. Okay, and people who are buying the debenture also will get, 5% return on investment. Suppose they invest, say, $1,000 of an Al-Futain, okay, in a debenture, then they would be able to get 5% return at the end of the year. By end of 2020, they'll be able to get, okay, $50 as interest income by investing in, Al-Futain bond. A bond is a fixed interest yielding asset. Suppose Al-Futain is floating bond, each having a face value of $1,000 US dollars and offering a 5% return. That means at the end of the year, after 1 year commission, you can get $50 as interest income by holding this bond. At the same time, the market rate of interest offered by the commercial banks in the UAE is also 5%. So instead of depositing money in the bank, they will try to invest in bonds. Why? Because they can make speculative gains if they are lucky. Okay? Remember that after some time, after a few weeks of issuing this bond by Al-Futain, okay, the market rate of interest has gone up from, say, 5% to 10%. Banks in the UAE started offering, say, 10% interest rate on deposits, fixed deposits in the banks. So what will happen? Okay, automatically a new company, okay, run by, okay, Gargash has issued a new bond having a face value of, okay, $500. Okay, if bond which is having a face value of $500 will yield you 10% return, because 10% is the market rate of interest. Okay, so 10% of $500 is $50, and also the 5% of $1,000 is also $50. So the people who are holding the Al-Futain bond earlier, they are purchasing earlier, they will make a loss of $500 per share. Okay, they can sell this share only for this bond only for $500 to the public, as a bond which is issued by Gargash having a face value of $500 will also fetch your interest income of, okay, $50. So when the market rate of interest has gone up from 5% to 10%, people who are holding the old bond having a face value of 1,000 issued by Al-Futain will make a capital loss of $500 because they cannot sell the old bond of $1,000 dollar face value for more than 500, because a new bond issued by Gargash, which has got a face value of $500, can also yield an interest income of $50. Okay, 10% of 500 is 50, as 5% of 1,000 is 50. So people who are holding Al-Futain's bond will incur a capital loss of $500 per share per bond. If they invested $1 million, $500,000 is lost. Okay. Conversely, if the market rate of interest has fallen from 5% to 2.5%, automatically the people who are holding the Al-Futain bond will make a capital gain, because the banks are offering 2.5% only now in the market. A new bond floated by, say, Al-Khabtur, having a face value of $2,000, will fetch only 2.5% return. 2.5% of $2,000 is $50, as 5% of $1,000 is 50. So people are holding Alphatham's bond can sell the bond up to a value of 2,000, okay, in the market. So they make a capital gain of $1,000, and the market interest has fallen from 5% to 2.5%. This way, if they are invested in $10 million, they will make a capital gain of, okay, another $10 million in the, capital market. Okay, this is what Lord Keynes has explained through the speculative motive of holding money. For Lord Keynes, the speculative demand for money is interest elastic. Okay, it is a negative function of the rate of interest. Okay, he has given the formula. Okay, liquidity preference for LPS is F of R. R stands for rate of interest. F is functional relationship. LPS stands for liquidity preference for speculative motive. So Lord Keynes summarizes the theory like this. Okay, he has given a diagram illustrating the speculative demand for money. So it's downward sloping. Rate of interest is shown here. The demand for supply of money is shown here. Okay. When Lord Keynes explains this, he says that when the rate of interest falls from OR to OR1, the demand for money for speculative motive increases from OM to OM1. The rate of interest falls to OR2 at a very low rate of interest like 1%. The speculative demand for money is infinitely elastic, perfectly elastic. So the LPS curve is a straight line here from point E to, okay. So this part is called liquidity trap. That means people keep the entire cash with them for speculative purposes. Why they keep the entire cash with them? The rate of interest is very low, because they are certain that if they hold all the cash with them, the rate of interest will surely rise in the future. So the demand for money for speculative motive is perfectly elastic or infinitely elastic at a very low rate of interest, because the opportunity cost of holding money is very low. Okay, so this is what the speculative demand for money. Now let us explain the total demand for money. The total demand for money is made up of three motives: transaction demand for money, precaution demand for money, and speculative demand for money. Okay, the transaction and precaution demand for money can be used by the letter L. Okay, sorry, L1. Okay, and the speculative demand for money can be used by the letter L2. L equals L1 plus L2 is F of Y and R. So liquidity preference for transactions, precautionary and speculative motive together are a function of income and rate of interest. Now, having explained the supply of demand for money, now let us discuss the second part of the liquidity preference theory of interest, the supply of money. The supply of money is determined by the monetary authority or the central banking authority of the country. In the United States of America, it's a Federal Reserve System. The UAE Central Bank. In Britain, it is the Bank of England. Okay, so the supply of money depends upon the policy of the central bank and the central government. Okay, so the supply of money does not change overnight. Okay, in the short run, the supply of money is almost fixed. It doesn't change. Okay, it's a vertical straight line. SM is the supply curve of money. Okay, according to Lord Keynes, the equilibrium rate of interest is determined at a point where the speculative demand for money is LPS is equal to SM, the supply of money. Okay, so here the equilibrium rate of interest is OR, and OM is the demand for and supply of money. Speculative demand for money and supply of money, because the transaction and precaution demand for money are interest inelastic. So Keynes has given only importance to the speculative demand for money, LPS curve, which is downward sloping, and SM curve is the supply of money curve. The SM curve intersects with the LPS curve at point E, it's the equilibrium point. OR is the equilibrium rate of interest, and OM is the demand for and supply of money. Okay, this is the determination of equilibrium rate of interest. Suppose the supply of money increases, the monetary authority increases supply of money, or create more money in the economy, or print more money in the economy. What will happen? The given liquidity preference, as the money supply increases from SM to SM1, M1, okay, S2, M2, automatically rate of interest falls from R to R1 and R2. As the supply of money increases with the given liquidity preference, rate of interest falls. Okay, as money supply increases, the given liquidity preference, rate of interest falls. And if money supply is fixed, given, and if the liquidity preference increases, the LPS curve will shift upward. As the LPS curve shift upward, automatically what happens? The equilibrium point is point E, okay, and OR is the equilibrium rate of interest, OM is the demand for and supply of money. As the LPS curve shifts from LPS to LPS1, what happens? Rate of interest, equilibrium shifts from E to E1, rate of interest increases from R to R1, okay, and with the given money supply, okay, the rate of interest rises when the liquidity preference increases or LPS curve shifts upward. So this is the Keynesian liquidity preference theory of interest. The Lord Keynes' theory of interest is better than the previous theories given by classical economists, savings and investment theory or loanable funds theory of neoclassical economists. However, this theory is also criticized on some grounds. Okay, some economists like Alvin H. Hansen says that the Keynesian theory of interest is indeterminate. Indeterminate means it cannot be determined properly Because he says that transactional precaution demand for money are income elastic and interest inelastic. Speculative demand for money is interest, okay, elastic. Okay, but he has not clearly explained how, okay, equilibrium rate of interest is determined by the intersection point of supply of money with the speculative demand for money. And again, secondly, his theory does not explain the factors, the real factors influencing rate of interest. Only has discussed about the monetary factors and completely ignored the real factors determining rate of interest. According to Professor Hansen and William J. Beaumont, okay, Keynesian theory is defective as he has not taken into account the role of real factors in the determination of rate of interest. Rate of interest is determined not only by monetary factors, as explained by Keynes, also influenced by real factors like savings, investment, etc., just ignored by Keynes. Again, as I told you earlier, Professor Alvin H. Hansen of Harvard University, USA says the Keynesian theory of interest is indeterminate. Okay, his theory fails to explain, okay, how rate of interest is actually determined. Lord Keynes criticized the earlier theories by saying that those theories are indeterminate. The Keynes criticism of other theories is equally applicable to his own theory. Again, thirdly, okay, according to economists like Sir Roy Harwood and others, at a very high rate of interest, Sir Roy Harwood and Jacob Weiner, at a very high rate of interest, even the transactions demand for money is interest elastic. See, if the rate of interest offered by the bank is say 10% or 15%, people will keep the minimum amount for transactions purposes. And so the Keynesian theory is defective because he emphasizes that transactions demand for money and precaution demand for money are income elastic and interest inelastic, but in reality, they can also be interest elastic. Again, Professor James Tobin, another leading American economist, says that Keynes theory is defective because he has failed to analyze the role of wealth on the determination of the rate of interest. Wealth also plays an important role. Again, another criticism of Keynesian theory is that Keynesian theory fails to explain why there are different rates of interest for different types of loans and how rate of interest is determined in the long run. He only talks about short-term analysis. He does not explain about the long run determination rate of interest. Again, Keynesian theory gives too much emphasis for the demand for money. His theory is liquidity purpose theory emphasizes too much on the demand side, the transactions motive, precaution motive, speculative motive, to the complete neglect of the supply side of money. So he has ignored the important factors influencing the supply of money. Okay, only briefly has explained that. So theory is defective. Okay, so the Keynesian theory is criticized on various grounds. Despite these criticisms, I would say the Keynesian theory of interest is a far better theory than the earlier theories of interest rate, like savings and investment theory of classical economists and laudable funds theory of neoclassical economists. Okay, so modern economists like Alvin H. Hansen and J.R. Hicks developed an ISLM curve integrating Keynesian theory with the previous classical theory, which is the modern theory of interest. However, the Keynesian theory of interest is relevant even today. Dear students, the chapter on the determination of liquidity purpose theory of interest is over. Please study thoroughly the notes. Notes are ready. Okay, Professor Anil will send you the notes, and also the notes on business cycles also will be sent by Professor Anil. Both these topics are important topics for under money and banking. So please study well. All the very best for the examination. Have a wonderful day.